Hey guys, Surix Gaming here, back with a different kind of video today. I wanted to do a bit of a news/speculation video going through some of the answers on a recent Q&A done on Twitter by the head of NetherRealm Studios, Ed Boon. NRS are responsible for making the Mortal Kombat games as well as the DC fighting games Injustice, for anyone who didn't know. Recently, Boon has been doing some Q&A threads on Twitter and answering fan questions, and for the most part, he hasn't really given away much to speculate on regarding the next title. He's very closed off with a lot of his answers. However, after going through today's thread, to me, it looks a lot more like Boon is teasing something specific. Here are a few tweets that caught my interest, and I'm just going to go into a bit of what I think Boon is teasing in those particular tweets. The most important tweets I picked up on seem to involve Boon teasing a 2023 release for the as of yet unannounced title, and he seems to be more open to answering MK12 related questions with actual answers rather than Injustice related questions. This to me points towards MK12 being a lot more likely to be NRS's next game instead of Injustice 3. Boon actually seems to tease a 2023 release in 3 answers to 3 different questions about the subject. And in 2 different answers, he seems to suggest it might even be in the first 6 months of 2023. Given that MK11 released in 2019, and NRS usually have a 2-year development cycle on their games, it will have been an extra 2 years on top of the cycle for this new game, which Boon actually confirmed in another answer was the result of the COVID pandemic and the world events. He didn't really elaborate further on that, just saying that development of the new game has been challenging. Moving on to a few character teasers from the Q&A, Boon answered quite a few questions asking if certain characters would return. Now again, he didn't really give yes or no answers, and take a lot of what Ed Boon says with a grain of salt. He is known to be quite a troll, but quite a few of his answers seem to heavily suggest that certain characters would or wouldn't make it back. One such character was Tremor, who most recently appeared as DLC in MKX. Boon actually stated that Tremor was likely to return, though he doesn't really mention if he means MK12 or just Tremor's going to return in general. Tremor was pretty fun in MKX, so for me personally, I wouldn't be mad if Tremor actually made the main roster of the next game. I think that would be pretty neat. When asked if we would see any 3D era characters return in MK12, Boon responded by outright confirming this with, "Yes, you will." Now, whether this means 1 or 2 characters or a decent chunk of the 3D era characters remains to be seen, since in MK9 and MKX and MK11, they only had about 2 or 3 in each game, which wasn't great considering the 3D era characters do make up a decent chunk of the total roster. Personally, for me, I absolutely need to see Havik and Ashura in a modern MK game. Havik and Ashura haven't appeared since MK Armageddon. Havik was in the MKX comics, and he was the main villain of the comics, but he's not mentioned once in the game. And he makes a cameo in MK9 in a character's ending, but again, he's not actually mentioned. He's just there. It's just a cool little tidbit for people who like Havik. Now, Havik is my favorite character, and if they give me Havik in a new game, I probably won't complain about the rest of the roster, but the more 3D era characters they put in there, the better. I'd also like to see characters like Natara, Hotaru, Onaga, and Blaze in modern MK titles, especially playable. Onaga wasn't playable in the first game he was released in, and he was playable in Armageddon, but so was everyone. He's also quite larger than most MK characters, so it'd be a unique spin on the roster, and it'd provide something that no other character is providing to the roster as of yet. Boon also stated that Reptile had a good chance to return after being an NPC only in the crypt during MK11, which doesn't surprise me. Reptile is a staple character. I wouldn't be shocked if, after sitting out one game, he's probably one of the first characters they're going to reveal in the next game. He is a big hit. And Boon also teased Tanya to return in a couple messages. So 2 people actually asked about Tanya, and in both answers, Boon seemed to be teasing that Tanya would be quite likely to return. Which also doesn't strike me as surprising. Tanya doesn't show up very often, but she is quite a popular character. she's definitely in the top 5 most popular female characters in the series. And yeah, I'd be pretty excited to see Tanya return. She was so much fun in MKX as a DLC character, and her design was also quite good, so hopefully she pops up on the main roster. And then when asked about Motaro, Boon said only stay tuned, which to me seems to work in Motaro's favour, considering the mini-boss hasn't shown up since Armageddon. He was briefly in MK9, but just like Havoc, he was just a little cameo. He wasn't actually mentioned or anything. He just dies, and then Shao Kahn looks at his body. That's it. That's really it. I wouldn't be surprised if Motaro is kind of like Goro, Shao Kahn from MKX and MK11, where he's a pre-order bonus, because he is more of a boss character, but he doesn't really. He's more similar to Goro and Kintaro, which I wouldn't be surprised if he does show up. I reckon he would be DLC, specifically a pre-order bonus, and hopefully he does, because since I've been a Mortal Kombat fan, I haven't played a mainline title where Motaro has interested me, just because his gameplay is really unique being a centaur, and he doesn't really seem to be given much of a chance to shine. That might just be the technology they had access to during the 3D era and the arcade games, but in a modern game, hopefully they can do Motaro some justice, and if they do, I reckon he'd be very popular. He'd be very fun to watch as well. Moving on to characters and games that Boon seems to be teasing as less likely to show up. Boon started with Draman, who ironically is a 3D era character, debuting in MK Deadly Alliance. Boon actually said he was unlikely to make a comeback in a response to someone asking for Draman. When asked about MKDC getting a sequel, Boon stated it was unlikely to happen in 2 separate replies. That doesn't surprise me. I wasn't a fan of MK vs DC. I don't think many people were. It was quite a departure from the series. So I'm glad they're not making one. He also said they're not likely to remaster the 3D era games, which sucks, but he did say he wouldn't be against remaking them completely in the 2D format like MK9X and 11. I would be so down for this. I would pre-order Day 1 Collector's Edition and play the shit out of those games. That would be so cool. Moving on to not an outright deconfirmation, but when someone asked about making MK9 backwards compatible on the Xbox, Boon mentioned it would take a lot of work to remaster MK9 and re-release it on the Xbox, and he again emphasized it would take a lot of effort. To me, this suggests an MK9 remaster or re-release seems to be unlikely, and that if they did do it, it would probably take NRS a while to do. So I'd imagine they probably wouldn't get started on this until they'd finish whatever they're working on now. Which seems fine, but MK9 was pretty good, and I'd love to play it on the Xbox Series X, especially since you can search it up in the Xbox store. It just doesn't let you download the game, unfortunately. And when asked about an Mortal Kombat vs Street Fighter crossover, Boon mentioned he was doubtful that it would ever happen, but in another tweet, he did also say that his own most requested guest character for an MK game would be Ryu, the main character from Street Fighter. That would be pretty awesome, but personally, I also find that super unlikely to happen. Sorry, guys. Finally, Boon also mentioned in a reply to the question about a possibility of an Armageddon 2 happening, and he said it was unlikely. Which, given that MK now has nearing 100 characters, and the games are much more in-depth to make, and a lot more difficult, it always seemed unlikely to me anyway, so I would be more shocked if it did happen than if it didn't. Well guys, I will link the thread to Ed Boon's Q&A down the bottom. He seems to be doing these quite often, maybe once every 2 weeks or so he does them. So feel free to check out some more of his replies, and I'm going to leave the video there, guys. So please do like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like to see some more Mortal Kombat news videos, and I will continue following the Mortal Kombat 12 hype train until we hopefully get some kind of confirmation for the character. Let me know down in the comments who your most requested MK12 character would be, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!